if you listen. The great thing for them, for their defense about that is that's in the past. All the folks on social media and so forth are saying, well, these people are drugged. They're saying they're drugged. Don't forget, it's easy to prove the court of public opinion, but when you get into an actual court, the federal government has approved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And someone just getting on the stand and saying, I was drugged, the defense can ask a very simple question. Where's the drug test?
The media storm surrounding Diddy had reached a fever pitch, and few could have predicted the relentless cascade of events that would soon engulf him. It all began when the cracks in his once impenetrable legal fortress first started to appear.
Lawyers representing Sean Diddy Combs in his trafficking case is quitting. Anthony Rico filed notice in Manhattan federal court.
An attorney representing Sean Diddy Combs in the trafficking case announced that he is stepping down as counsel.
In a dramatic turn that stunned both his supporters and critics alike, Diddy's high-profile attorney, Anthony Rico, abruptly quit the case. Rico was no stranger to high-stakes legal battles. He had once defended some of the most infamous figures in history, including close associates of bin Laden and other notorious personalities. His sudden departure from Diddy's defense team sent a clear message. Even the most seasoned legal professionals were beginning to doubt the strength and integrity of the case they were asked to defend.
The lawyer might have found out that their client's crimes were much, much worse than they expected, like so bad that they just can't morally stick with the case and they gotta go. That might be the reason, because as far as we know, you and I, Diddy's crimes are terrible, but his lawyers know much more than what we know. They know how far Diddy might have went. So Anthony, Diddy's lawyer who left, might have seen something he didn't want to see and said, look, I can't even work with bro anymore.
Within the austere walls of Manhattan's federal court, whispers began to spread about the depth of Diddy's legal woes. The case, which involved trafficking and racketeering charges, was far from a simple matter of celebrity misfortune. At its core was a complex battle between public opinion and the uncompromising demands of the legal system.
Rico, who was retained by Combs in September, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Combs has 5 other attorneys on his team, end quote. Let me say this.
Because Anthony Rico was someone that Sean Combs was clearly comfortable with. He also grew up in Harlem, and he would often sit next to Sean Combs, kind of keep him calm during court proceedings. And here Rico is now very experienced litigator, represented death row inmates, represented Al-Qaeda defendants, represented cops in the killing of Sean Bell here in New York, an experienced lawyer who now says, for reasons really unknown, that he can no longer.
Outside the courtroom, social media was rife with claims that Diddy and his associates had been drugged, and that these influences had clouded their judgment. Such narratives, however, hold little sway in the face of hard evidence and rigorous legal scrutiny. In the actual court of law, the defense's reliance on personal testimonies, such as a claim of being drugged, was met with the inevitable pointed question, where's the drug test?
Positive outcome in favor of that client. So that client, if Sean Diddy Combs gets off trafficking and racketeering charges and the jury finds him not guilty months from now and he's able to walk out the courtroom a free man, you know how good that makes those attorneys look?
This crucial gap in the evidence underscored a broader issue that was beginning to haunt Diddy's public image. As the case unfolded, the tactics employed by Diddy's legal team only deepened the sense of unease surrounding the proceedings. The defense strategy took a controversial turn, with Diddy himself doubling down on claims of racial persecution, a stance that, while designed to rally a base of support, also raised eyebrows among legal experts and the general public. Alongside this, there were subtle insinuations aimed at his accusers, suggesting that perhaps they had somehow contributed to the situation.
Defense have said.
So what the defense has done is they're taking an interesting tack, and I think the legal analysis is becoming fascinating. And they're saying if you look at these videos, this shows a consensual relationship.
Everybody will be clamoring for the cameras. Every single one of them. They'll be going crazy. They'll all be clamoring for the cameras. So I'm saying all of that to you to say, if that's the case, let's understand what we're talking about here.
This dual narrative of victimhood and blame was seen by many as an attempt to rewrite the script of his legal troubles, but it ended up backfiring. Critics, including prominent sports commentator Stephen A. Smith, were quick to note that such tactics only served to further erode Diddy's credibility. The perception was growing that, while Diddy's attorneys worked to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, They were simultaneously undermining his own position by shifting focus away from the mounting evidence against him. The unfolding drama took on even darker shades when rumors began to circulate about potential bombshell evidence that could emerge at any moment. Among the most explosive of these was the possibility that Diddy's name might be linked to a notorious list, a list once associated with Jeffrey Epstein, whose shadow loomed large over many high-profile cases. There were murmurs that if the names on Epstein's list were revealed to the public, it could spell disaster for Diddy in the court of public opinion. In an age where media narratives can shape legal realities, the mere suggestion that Diddy's name could be attached to such a scandal was enough to send shockwaves through both his legal team and his public relations outfit. Amid this swirling vortex of allegations and counter-allegations, a particularly unsettling development emerged from within Diddy's own camp. His attorneys, in a desperate bid to gain control of the narrative, were pushing hard to force the identities of key witnesses and alleged victims into the public domain. The defense argued that revealing these names was necessary to prepare a robust case for trial. However, legal experts and critics saw this move for what it was, an intimidation tactic. The fear was palpable. If these names were made public, it would not only compromise the safety of those involved, but also signal that Diddy was willing to use his influence to silence voices that dared to speak against him. In fact, court documents painted a chilling picture of a man who had, time and again, used his power, wealth, and connections to keep dissent at bay. The very thought of being called as a witness against such a figure was enough to instill terror in many of the alleged victims. That terror was not unfounded. Testimonies and court filings began to reveal just how deeply frightened some of Diddy's accusers were at the prospect of him walking free on bail. The emotional testimony was stark. Witnesses were reported to be trembling at the mere possibility of Diddy's release, knowing full well the extent of his reach and the power he wielded. For these individuals, the legal proceedings were not just a battle for justice. They were a fight for their very safety. The prosecution had fought tooth and nail to keep the identities of these witnesses under wraps, understanding that exposure could lead to even greater harm. But as the legal drama intensified, so did the fear among those who had suffered alleged abuse, their apprehensions serving as a grim reminder of the risks involved in testifying against a man of Diddy's stature. In the midst of this legal maelstrom, a series of fresh lawsuits began to pour in, each one a fresh indictment of the allegations that had long been whispered about in hushed tones behind closed doors. On a fateful Monday, at least 6 new lawsuits were filed in federal court, each carrying accusations that ranged from horrific acts against women and men to the even more disturbing allegation involving a 16-year-old boy. This was not the work of a single disgruntled individual. It was a veritable avalanche of legal challenges that underscored a pattern of behavior as disturbing as it was extensive. Victims claimed that Diddy had lured them into a glamorous yet perilous world of lavish parties and exclusive gatherings, only for that dream to quickly turn into a nightmare. Once inside his orbit, they alleged, his charm gave way to coercion, as he used the promise of stardom and fortune to ensnare and control those who crossed his path. The narrative that emerged from these lawsuits was both heart-wrenching and explosive. Multiple sources with direct knowledge of the matter came forward with allegations that painted a picture of a man who not only exploited his fame, but did so with a ruthlessness that bordered on criminal. Accounts of brutalization and intimidation were common, with some witnesses asserting that Diddy's methods were as calculated as they were vicious. In one particularly chilling vein of testimony, it was suggested that Diddy made explicit threats, warning that any attempt to speak out or defy him would result in severe and possibly fatal consequences. The legal papers were replete with descriptions of a system designed to silence dissent and crush any opposition through sheer force of will and the strategic deployment of legal intimidation. Yet, perhaps the most shocking aspect of the case was the potential for these allegations to extend beyond the immediate realm of criminal justice and into the annals of music history. Rumors began to surface that Diddy might even be connected to another notorious chapter in hip-hop lore, the death of a rival figure whose passing had rocked the music industry. One of Diddy's former bodyguards, a man named Gandeal, stepped forward with claims that could rewrite the history of the genre. Deal's bombshell allegations hinted at possible connections between Diddy and the tragic events surrounding the death of Biggie Smalls, the iconic rapper whose demise had long been shrouded in mystery and controversy. If these claims were substantiated, they could not only tarnish Diddy's already besmirched reputation further, but also trigger a seismic shift in the narrative of hip-hop history. As these myriad legal battles, lawsuits, and allegations converged, Diddy's once mighty empire began to crumble. The very institutions that had once bolstered his image, media, legal teams, and public relations experts, now appeared impotent in the face of mounting evidence and growing public scrutiny. Every new revelation, every leaked document, and every courageous testimony from former insiders chipped away at the carefully constructed veneer of invincibility. Industry insiders, who had long kept their lips sealed, were now coming forward, with explosive claims, laying bare secrets that had been carefully guarded for years. It was as if the proverbial dam was breaking, and once the floodgates were opened, there would be no stopping the torrent of information that threatened to expose every dark corner of Diddy's past. The repercussions of these developments extended far beyond the immediate legal proceedings. Public opinion was shifting rapidly, and the once revered music mogul was now cast in the role of a pariah. The court of public opinion, a powerful force, in its own right, had begun to construct a narrative that was increasingly damning. With each passing day, the legend of the untouchable mogul gave way to a more nuanced and far less flattering portrait. Even if Diddy were to secure a not guilty verdict in court, the damage to his public image might be irreparable. The contrast between a courtroom victory and a public relations debacle had never been starker, and the implications for his future were dire. Behind the scenes, Diddy's remaining legal team was scrambling to salvage what they could of a crumbling defense. They were caught in a race against time, desperately trying to piece together a strategy that could withstand the relentless barrage of lawsuits and the explosive new evidence that was emerging almost daily. Their efforts, however, were hampered by the very nature of the accusations, a web of allegations that spanned decades and implicated not just a single incident, but a pattern of behavior that seemed to define Diddy's career. Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and every legal document painted a picture of a man who had exploited his power and wealth to subdue anyone who dared to oppose him. The looming possibility of having to reveal the identities of key witnesses only added to the tension, as the potential fallout from such a move could be catastrophic. In a twist that underscored the gravity of the situation, it became clear that Diddy's legal troubles were not merely a matter of defending against isolated claims. They were emblematic of a broader cultural reckoning, a moment when the reckoning of power, fame, and accountability was coming to a head. The allegations against him were not isolated incidents, but part of a disturbing continuum of behavior that had left scars on countless lives. The legal proceedings, with all their complexity and high stakes, were merely the latest chapter in a saga that was fast approaching a critical juncture. Amid the chaos, observers began to draw parallels between the legal strategies employed in Diddy's case and those seen in other high-profile criminal trials. The insistence on forcing the identities of witnesses, the aggressive defense tactics, and the manipulation of public opinion were all reminiscent of tactics employed by those who had found themselves on the wrong side of the law. But what set Diddy apart was not just the scale of the allegations. It was the intertwining of celebrity culture with the brutal realities of legal accountability. In the glare of the public spotlight, every misstep was magnified, every questionable decision scrutinized, and every piece of evidence, no matter how small, was dissected for its potential to contribute to a growing narrative of corruption and abuse. As the trial loomed closer, the stakes continued to rise. Every new lawsuit, every damning allegation, and every testimony from former insiders served as a grim reminder that Diddy's empire was not built on a foundation of untouchable success, but on a precarious balance of power and influence that was rapidly unraveling. The legal battlefield was no longer just about clearing his name. It had become a fight for his very legacy. In the end, the true question was not whether Diddy would be found guilty or not, but whether the public, once enthralled by his persona, could ever forgive or forget the dark undercurrents that had defined his rise to fame. In this fraught atmosphere, the echoes of courtroom dramas and high-profile legal battles reverberated across the media landscape. Every new development was met with a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a grim sense of inevitability. Diddy's case was evolving into a modern-day cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of power and the ultimate price of notoriety. The narrative was shifting from one of glamour and success to one of downfall and disgrace, a story in which the once mighty mogul was now fighting a battle on multiple fronts, one that extended far beyond the confines of the courtroom. The disintegration of Diddy's public image was a slow-motion spectacle, played out in real time for the world to see. What had once been a carefully curated image of success, influence, and invincibility was now a mosaic of legal missteps, shattered alliances, and explosive allegations. As insiders continued to speak out and more evidence came to light, the future of Diddy's empire grew increasingly uncertain. With each passing day, the possibility of a dramatic, irreversible collapse loomed larger, threatening not only his career but also the cultural legacy he had spent decades building. In the end, the saga of Diddy's legal troubles served as a stark reminder that even the most celebrated figures are not immune to the consequences of their actions. The drama that had unfolded was a powerful testament to the inexorable force of accountability, a force that, once set in motion, would not be halted by fame, wealth, or influence. Whether or not Diddy would ever emerge unscathed from this maelstrom remained to be seen, but one thing was certain. The story of his rise and potential fall was far from over, and its final chapters promised to be as riveting and consequential as the man himself. Thus, as the courtroom battles raged on and the public's verdict was slowly being written in real time, Diddy's once untouchable empire stood on the precipice of collapse. With the legal team in disarray, the relentless stream of lawsuits, and the damning testimonies from brave insiders, it became increasingly clear that the narrative of his legacy was undergoing a profound transformation, a transformation that might well mark the end of an era in more ways than one.